Hey, and welcome back to Mega Man 3 for the Game Boy. Last part we took out 4 of the Mega Man 3 NES Robot Masters, and in this part we're going to be fighting some Mega Man 4 ones, but first we've got a little bit of story, I guess. Like, we've got this extra insert level where there's going to be a kind of mini boss to fight before we do anything else. And this is probably a good time for me to go into the story from this game, because this game has a story. It's very lightweight, like you can barely tell what's going on in the game. It's typical Game Boy fare of read the fucking manual if you want to know what's going on. But in this game, Wily is using a converted oil platform in the middle of the ocean to draw energy from the Earth's core. And he wants to power up some new machine, which I assume is either the Wily machines at the end or the other character who we'll meet in the next part. I'm not sure really, it's kind of vague. But yeah, that's essentially what he's doing. That's why we're making our way to Wily Station, and why we're going to be trying to stop him. It's the same deal as usual, really, you know, like, it's a bullshitted plot that exists solely to give us an excuse to fight Robot Masters, but I really don't care. It's not the kind of game where I want anything more than that. And honestly, as far as this goes, the fact they've put that much thought into it, even if it was made up by some localization team or whatever, it's something. It's a little bit of character to the game. And it also... like, I think I've been referring to the Wily Stations as Wily Castles throughout this whole little series of LPs. They're technically known as Wily Station in the Game Boy games. I don't know if there's meant to be a difference or if they just wanted to call it something different for the sake of being different, because ultimately they all look the same. Like, they tend to have the same Wily motif on them, and station is kind of an ambiguous word. Like, there was the one sort of fucking in space, and you know, like, it's kind of very ambiguous as to what it's meant to mean. That hurt. That actually did quite a lot of damage to me there. It looked like it took down probably about a third of my health bar, like, because I think I had a couple of knocks already. But yeah, I suppose it's just a little bit of world building, the fact that Wily has these different kind of creations that he goes and hides in the Game Boy games compared to the main series NES ones. And I guess by proxy, as well as the Super Nintendo ones, and like 8, because like the classic series, like, it did cover a few different systems, because like the first 6 on NES, they're the ones that I care mostly about. They're the ones that they're my favourites of them. Then there's 7, which I know I've done a playthrough of 7 on here before, like with Stephen, Chris and Joey, but like, I was never that keen on 7. I actually replayed that recently just to put a long play up on FC Playthroughs, and 7, even after replaying it with much better, like, after I took the time to actually get good at shit rather than just fumbling my way through, it still isn't that fun. 7, it's very much, like, it feels much clunkier than the Nintendo Entertainment System games. And when you consider that that was out around the same time as, like, the first X games, Mega Man X is so much faster paced than 7 is. Like, 7 is slow compared to the NES games. X is faster than the NES games. So when they're both coming out around the same time, 7 is obviously going to look like the inferior product, or at least feel like it. The other Mega Man game that I've played recently and actually beat for the first time, which took me way too fucking long to get to, is actually Mega Man X2. Which X2, I think I've always had kind of an unfair impression on it, purely on the basis that I love X1 so much. Because like, X2 is not a bad game by any means, it just feels like a less amazing version of X1, so it sort of gets hurt by relativity in that respect. Though some of the stages are quite interesting, like some of the little tricks that you can do with the Maverick weapons are quite cool as well. Like, I like using the speed burner to like dash across things. It kind of gives a bit more of a boost to your dash jump, which is really cool. It's like that extra bit of mobility, and it's also something you can use to find hidden paths, to find extra items and whatnot, so that's cool. There's a few other things as well, like I'm not sure how to feel about the X-Hunter stages. They're the later levels in any Mega Man games are the ones that I don't really remember that much, like the Wily Castle stages, the Wily Station stages, the fucking like Sigma stage in X1, and like they're the ones that just sort of to me. Like they're normally just like a compilation of all the different enemies and level set pieces and that you fought in the Robot Master stages or Maverick stages, so they're never going to be the most memorable things. So, you know, like, there's only so much I'm going to remember there. The X-Hunter stages are okay, I guess, but then that's about the same as what I can say for the other later stages in Mega Man games. As for other Mega Man games I've played this year, like outside of the ones I covered on the channel, I did actually play in the X6. Like, I think back around April or so, I played through that because I wanted to do the playthrough for FC playthroughs. And that game, it's kind of bullshit in a lot of ways. Like, I don't think it's the, like, unplayable mess. Like, it's very difficult, and you will kind of want to use save states if you're not going to drive yourself up the wall with it. Like, it's not, like, worst game ever made kind of tier, but it is kind of a shit show from start to finish. There are a lot of negative things you can say for X6, all of which are absolutely deserved. I think I still prefer X6 to X7, because X7 has X6's problems, but with slow, clunky 3D platforming on top of it. I watched my friend Snake play through X7 during the Sonython, and yeah, that was a bit of a shit show, that game. Like, there's all kinds of things wrong with it, like massive load times, there's like the previously mentioned like slow, clunky 3D sections. It's got a lot of problems, just like X6 does, just exaggerated, so. But this level here is Skullman's stage, and Skullman, he was always one of my favourite Robot Masters from 4. I like his design, I like the whole bone motif, because that's something that you don't really see that often. Like, it's a cool thing that you can work with, and like, unless it's being explicitly called off to like Halloween type settings, you don't tend to see it that much. So to see it like developed out like this with like the proper ribcage shaped spikes and all the different bone pipe works, it's all like really cool aesthetically. And it also has a really cool song. Skullman's theme is one of the most memorable songs from 4 in my opinion, because there's one thing that like I can say for the later NES games. I remember basically all the songs from 1, 2 and 3, not so much from 4, 5 and 6. Like the ones that stick out to me from 4, I would say the Skullman stage, and not much else is coming to mind for me. Like 5, I can say the same sort of thing. Like I remember Starman stage because it's like such a radically different approach to Mega Man music to most Mega Man NES games, because like it's a much gentler sort of mystique vibe it's got going on, along with the space atmosphere to the level, which works really well. And the fact that I remember something from Mega Man 5, that's quite impressive, because I know I said this a lot during the FlameHisWorld Mega Man 5 playthrough back in the day, but it's probably the least memorable of the classic games. Like I would still take it over 7, but it's very much plays it safe. I guess that is like a bit of a subjective critique that I bring to it, and it's the sort of thing that I think if I had played Mega Man 5 before any of the others, I would have had a much fonder memory of it. But because it was like, oh, it's 4 again, like, which in turn is like a less impressive version of 2 and 3, it just didn't really stick to memory as much. Like, I like 6, I really like 6. Like, again, it's not quite as memorable as 2 or 3, but like it's got some cool ideas to it. Like, I think it is basically just built on top of 5, but just the enemy designs, like I think it's Blizzard Man, and I like fucking like Flame Man. Like, obviously he's the one named after me. Even though I think that game came out before I was born as well. Can't remember exactly, because this Flame came about 95. Can't remember when Mega Man 6 came about, but you know, I don't have the entire series committed to memory. I'm not very good at remembering dates for things in general. That's why usually at the start of these runs, the first thing you hear me do is read off my notes about when things came out, because Lord knows I ain't gonna remember when this shit came out. But here with Dive Man stage, we're seeing the Mega Man 4 trend of putting spikes everywhere showing itself in this game. And I will say the spikes are probably harder to avoid in this game, and that's another thing that comes about from the screen size being smaller. Because naturally, if the screen size is smaller, you don't have as far to jump. Like, you can still jump the same distance, but it means that the levels and the hazards are packed in more tightly. So if you get a little bit over enthusiastic with your jump, then you're going to hit the ceiling which has spikes on, and you're going to die, because as with all Mega Man games, the spikes here are one hit kill. So yeah, be a little bit careful. Like, this is actually reminding me more so of like Bubble Man stage from Mega Man 2, because that had similar like hallway sections like we're seeing here, where it's just go horizontally across a section that has spikes on the ceiling, and it's a low ceiling in water. I can't remember much of Dive Man stage from 4. Like, I remember that little robot whale enemy, because yeah, like that's one of the main set pieces from Dive Man stage, and they brought him back here doing what he usually does. We do miss out on the other water themed Robot Master from 4 in this game, which is obviously Toadman. I imagine that means we'll be seeing Toadman in Mega Man 4 Game Boy. And Toadman, he also showed up in the Game Gear version of Mega Man, which was kind of a combination of Mega Man 4 and 5. And for some reason they really fucking sped Toadman up, because like Toadman is the joke Robot Master in 4. He's the one that you can beat really easily just by sliding under him. So when they radically increased his speed in the Game Gear one, that did take me by surprise the first time I played that, because it's like I was getting ready to just like slide under him, shoot him, slide under him, shoot him, as I'd done in 4, but no, they really fucking buffed him up a bit. I guess that's a little bit of redemption for him. Like, he's been the meme bot for so long, and they give him his comeback. He's also like shows up in the fucking Wily stages in that game rather than having his own dedicated level. So like maybe that was him getting boosted, like getting promoted. But yes, this section can be quite tricky as well, because you've got to gauge when the water's risen high enough for you to be able to make like a jump under spikes safely. I'm playing it safe here with these explosives because they hurt, and I don't want to get hit by those or have one of those grippy things landing on me while I'm trying to slide under or anything like that. I tend to be the play it safe type with these kind of games, just because, you know, it's quicker to play it safe and maybe loiter around in the level a little bit than it is to, you know, constantly get hit and then be vulnerable and then have to be really safe or die and get thrown back. Like, naturally, if I died in the playthrough, I wouldn't have left it in, but like, just when I'm playing platformers in general, that tends to be my approach to things. But yeah, Dive Man, he's weak to Skullman. I believe he was in the NES game as well. And Skullman's weapon is just a typical shield weapon, so turn it on, get close to him. Naturally, you're putting yourself in harm's way by getting close to him, but I think you're in this situation here where as long as you haven't taken too many hits in the level, then you'll have plenty of health that you can be a little bit reckless in the boss. Like, you can just, you know, turn it on and just walk over to him without any worries at all. But yeah, we got the dive missile. Not the most memorable weapon. Like, I think it was getting to the point with these later games where a lot of the weapons were like just reskins of other weapons. Like Skullman's weapon, it's a shield weapon which is kind of like the wood shield from 2. And then that'd get used yet again for Starman's weapon in 5. And I can't remember if there was one similar in 6. I think that might have been Blizzard Man's weapon, although that's kind of fires off a bit differently to the others do. Like, that's more akin to Woodman than, say, Skullman. Again, I might be talking at my arse here. Like, I don't really have everything committed to memory with Mega Man like I do with, like, say, Sonic, or I guess even Pokemon, although I think it kind of goes without saying that Steven's more the Pokemon encyclopedia than I am there. That's why I always want him there for the Pokemon LPs. But yeah, it is nice to have the series that just always comes to mind. Especially, like, for me with Mega Man, I've said this many a time, but it's not a series I grew up with, but it's just a series that just had that kind of appeal to me that I wanted to lose myself in, much akin to how I did with Sonic when I was younger. Because it is just such a simplistic yet flexible platformer. And yeah, they did basically just give me 2 E-Tanks there, and I think the limit you can carry is 4 in this game, I want to say. It's either 4 or 9, but I think this is one of the games where it's 4. And so naturally you got 2 there. I can't remember if I used any against the final boss or not. I might have, because toward the end of these games I tend to go a little bit more reckless than I do during the Robot Master stages. But of course, given I'm playing this with save states, I didn't really need to be overly careful. And yeah, I just caught a glimpse of it in the menu screen there. Yeah, it is 4 that you can carry, and I've got all 4. They're not like overly generous with them, I don't think, but like when they give you 2 in a trot there that are like just given to you, they're the ones that, you know, they maybe expect you to have some trouble, given we're like on the second part of the game now. What it does remind me of is in the NES version of Mega Man 4, where the E-Tanks respawn, and they give you an E-Tank right at the start of the first, I want to say, Wily stage. So if you want to grind for E-Tanks, like if you're having trouble against the Wily bosses, you can do that, just deliberately game over and over again, and it gives you a new E-Tank every time. So I think back in the day when I first recorded 4, like for the old FlameHisWorld run, which is not very good, it's not aged very well, that run, just to be completely honest, but like, I think that's the approach I did there, edited out, because I'd learnt to edit by then, not like the 1, 2 and 3 runs. But yeah, so like that was my trick then. And I think when I went back to re-record it for the long play, I did just use save states just to get myself through smoothly in one run. But yeah, join me next time where I'll be taking on the final part of the game. See you then.